Every time you turn around in Green Bay, Wisconsin, you bump into the history of the National Football League.
I was just fortunate enough to come to God's team, to Green Bay Packers.
The ground that we're walking on was paved by men who believed, who fought, who scraped.
The story always was you can't win in Green Bay.
I just wanted to play football, and what better place to play?
It shocked people that little Green Bay all at once was a power again. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
We breathed breath back into the crown jewel of the National Football League, the Green Bay Packers.
Gentlemen, this is the most important play we have. The play we must make go.
The Vince Lombardi Trophy is coming home where it started.
This was a franchise that was mired in mediocrity. Fans would call me and say, you know, Bob, I'm not sure we'll ever win another championship, and I worry that the league is getting too big for little Green Bay.
Green Bay is, relatively speaking, is a small town in a big town business.
This is a franchise that was going on a quarter century now of basically falling out of relevance and not being anywhere close to championship.
The business was changing, and I think the Packers would be the first to tell you they were slow to recognize it.
Near the end of an ugly 1991 season, with 5 games still remaining, Tom Bratz is fired as the Packers' Executive Vice President of Football Operations. Bob Harlan makes the call.
He took the bold steps that were necessary to shake this organization out of the doldrums.
He's a guy that recognized that what was being done wasn't working.
Just high-level incompetence at the very top of the organization.
He took the bull by the horns, changed that mindset, and changed the structure of the organization.
And these are brilliant, successful businessmen, but none of them are really football people. It's like asking somebody who runs a hardware store to go run a hospital.
Bob Harlan's genius was seeing, we can't do it this way anymore. We have to hire someone who knows how to pull off big trades, who knows how to make great draft picks, who can find the diamonds in the rough.
I call Al Davis and I tell him, you know, I'm going to have an opportunity to become the general manager of the Packers.
I said, Ron, I'm going to offer you this job. And I said, I'm going to talk to you until you say yes.
I was hired by the Green Bay Packers around Thanksgiving of 1991.
The executive committee and the board of directors will have absolutely nothing to do with football decisions in the future. That's the only way I got Ron Wolf. I knew if I didn't give him that authority, we didn't have a prayer in the world of hiring him.
What brought me here was the opportunity. I couldn't get my name on that contract fast enough.
At the time, the team is 3-9 and will miss the playoffs for the 22nd time in 24 years.
I want him to come in and live with this team.
He worked for Al Davis for a lot of years with the Raiders, and he was trained from a very young age how to evaluate talent.
I want you to look at this team and come and tell me what's wrong with it. Why don't we win?
It was not a good situation here. I wanted to bring players in to test them, to see how good they were. The head coach didn't want to do that, so I could tell that this isn't going to work.
Lindy Infante was in a lot of trouble, and Ron was going to go after a new head coach.
He had a lot of self-trust in his preparation to pull the trigger and make some tough decisions.
Just a month into his new job as the Packers general manager, Ron Wolf fires coach Lindy Infante. In his 4 years as head coach, Infante compiles a 24-40 record.
Lindy really spent a lot of time teaching me how to become a professional quarterback and not just a guy who ran around and made plays. I owe a lot to him for my development.
Lindy was an old school coach that believed in discipline and doing things the right way. And it's his rules, that's it. But within that, you get a chance to be yourself and be a man.
Before Wolf sets out to find a new coach, he is determined to reset the narrative surrounding the Green Bay Packers.
When I was playing football, this is where you went to die. Coaches would say, you're going to send you to Green Bay.
So it was very important to me to get our guys to understand that this isn't Siberia.
Ron Wolf came in and took over a situation that was in need of someone to say,
we're going to turn this around.
We started a tradition here of taking advantage of the true history of the Green Bay Packers.
One of the things that these guys did, they reached out to the old Packers, and they invited us back as honorary captains.
We embraced the tradition of the game, the tradition of the Green Bay Packers. We made that a positive, not a negative.
In the locker room, you see Bart Starr and, Ray Nitsky and, all the history, Dave Robinson and Max McGee. You just get goosebumps.
Ron Wolf did exactly what Vince Lombardi did. He changed the culture, he changed the environment, and he made it a winner.
His decisions he would make, he would consult the people that were going to be affected too. He listened, but when he made his decision, he stuck with it. You don't like to say this, but he cleaned house, and he started with his people.
Wolf knows exactly how he wants the Packers' head coach lineage to proceed.
And everybody thought Bill Parcells, Dick Vermeil, all these guys were going to be our coaches.
I was going to hire my buddy Bill Parcells. There's no question about that. I offered him the job, but he couldn't do it. He needed open heart surgery, and he told me that.
Wolf convinces Mike Holmgren to cast his lot with the woebegone Packers.
Mike Holmgren, whom I did not know, was doing one heck of a job as the offensive coordinator with San Francisco.
And Mike Holmgren was the hottest thing in the league at that time.
He was like the girl with the curl. Everybody wanted him.
He was a very football-savvy guy.
There was other teams looking at him.
I thought, there's no way we're going to get him, but let's go chase it.
We'd been disappointed so many times before by the so-called savior coming in that it's kind of like at that point, okay, we'll wait and see.
This is the team that hadn't had a good coach since Lombardi. That was a quarter of a century.
I interviewed at Green Bay first. And if you continue interviewing, oftentimes that job gets filled. I said, I've got these other interviews. And he said, go ahead, and I'll keep this for you, and I hope it works.
And I was in a dilemma because I really didn't have a backup. So I was going to have to go back to work.
Pursued by no fewer than 6 NFL teams, Holmgren signs a 5-year contract as the 11th head coach for Green Bay.
I had been there about a month. I'm in the market, and I've got a little cart, and I'm getting some stuff. Going down the aisle, and I see about 40 feet away a little old lady just looking over the edge of her cart coming at me. It looks like, reminds me of my grandma. And I kind of move to the right, and she moves over there. I move over here, she moves over. So pretty soon, she's not going to let me by. She's not. So our carts go bang. And she just looks at me and goes, "You're the new coach." I said, "Yes, I am, ma'am." She goes, "Hey, California, let's kick some butt."
I'm sure Ron Wolf told him about this team's history and how long it had been since the glory years.
I sold him on the tradition of the Green Bay Packers.
It was a kind of place where if you succeed here, they're going to name a street after you.
It's his show to run. I'm not going to interfere with anything he does as far as coaching is concerned.
That is the big thing between a general manager and a coach, to be able to work together.
And I suppose there's an attraction to going where it's a reclamation project, where there's nowhere to go but up.
With Ron and Mike Holmgren, that was a couple of pretty good guys to try to fix it.
I can remember covering Mike Holmgren's introductory press conference and even asking him the question that, okay, you had all this success with the West Coast offense in sunny California. How are you going to do in the Midwest in the cold of December? And he didn't bat an eyelash. He believed that they were going to win here.
Mike Holmgren hired a wonderful staff of assistant coaches.
Yeah, they were young guys. Like Andy Reid was my assistant line coach. He coached the tight ends. John Gruden came in as a quality control.
He brought in Ray Rhodes and Fritz Schirmer.
Sherm Lewis on the offensive side, Ray Rhodes on the defensive side.
Their success with the 49ers, working with Mike Holmgren there, certainly added up to success here.
And then Dick Geron had been here, and he was a good defensive coach.
Bob Valiceni, Greg Blasch.
And Steve Mariucci, the Mooch.
That's the mark of a great head coach. Not only putting in your system and calling plays, but hiring a coaching staff and training your staff.
The formula of coaches that he put together, name after name, that are now in NFL, they're NFL leaders now.
But I always looked for teachers and people that could communicate with the player.
They've been monster makers of great professional athletes along the way.
But it doesn't really matter how much you know. It's what you can communicate to that player and get him to understand.
Everything was tailored toward winning, and that was the mindset.
You could make a case that that coaching staff he had in the early years was the best coaching staff in NFL history.
I said to Mike Holmgren one time, with all the offers you had, why did you pick Green Bay? I mean, we hadn't won. There was nothing to indicate we were going to be successful. Why did you come here?
One of the reasons I came to Green Bay was because of Ron.
He said, I knew Ron would get me the players.
Even before the signing of Holmgren, Ron Wolf has his eye on a prize.
Atlanta has selected Brett Favre, quarterback, Southern Mississippi.
An unknown player Wolf becomes reacquainted with at a game in Atlanta, December 1st, 1991.
I go up to the press box, and I'm hungry. I want a hot dog.
Ron comes in about half hour, 45 minutes before kickoffs, puts his briefcase down next to me. He says, Bob, I'm going to go watch Atlanta's backup quarterback throw.
And the guy I worked with for a number of years came up to me and said, you got to go down and watch him now, because when the team comes out, they won't let him throw.
He said, if his arm is as strong now as it was coming out of college, we're going after him.
So right away, I'm thinking to myself, wow, I got a chance to get the player that I thought was the best player in the 1991 draft.
The very first thing I do is take my flip card and find out who the heck is the backup quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, and I thought it was a guy named Favre.
I start to go down to the field to watch him. I never get there because I'm surrounded by Green Bay and Milwaukee TV stations that want to ask me questions. So I go back up and eat my hot dog.
Ron comes back in about a half an hour, and he says, we're going to make a trade for Brett Favre. Are you okay with that? Just that blunt.
I've often wondered what he thought about that conversation. You know, he's thinking, geez, I just hired you and you want to bring a quarterback in that can't even get dressed for the Atlanta Falcons. Anyway.
Ron brings me the name of a player to watch. This is in 1992, January.
Ron Wolf told Mike Holmgren that this was the guy that he wanted. Holmgren knew Brett Favre because of the draft workout.
I had conducted Brett's college workout at his school at Southern Miss.
Watched it, I came back, I said, there it is. And he goes, well, what'd you think? I said, I think he's pretty good.
Ron said, what do you think? I said, well, let me go get my report. Outstanding physical traits, just what you want, great personality.
Well, what do you think? I said, what do you think? Because I wasn't going to get into that conversation that early in my career.
The negative, or the question mark, was, will he be disciplined enough in my offense? Because he's kind of a gunslinger.
Ron said about Brett Favre, when Brett ran on the field tilted in that direction. And that was just his way of saying, I knew in my heart that this was what it was all about.
The Packers acquire second-year quarterback Brett Favre in a trade with Atlanta. They give up a first-round draft pick for a kid who is riding the bench.
Trade your number one draft choice for a quarterback nobody heard of. Can't even pronounce his name.
Who is this? He traded a first-round pick for this guy that never played?
The mail I got saying, first of all, who's this Wolf guy you hired? And who's this quarterback we just picked up?
The last on the depth chart. No one knows who I am. I didn't get along very well with Jerry Glanville. I didn't play. I think I may have played 4 or 5 plays.
It was a gamble for a guy picked in the second round a year before, who had, by his own admission, drank himself out of Atlanta.
What I had done basically was drink a lot of beer, eat a lot of hot wings, and that was about it.
Only Ron Wolf would have had the gumption to do that.
He was very decisive, very confident in his decision making, and was not afraid to take a risk.
I was so excited the day we made the trade for Brett Favre. I thought surely Atlanta's going to back out of this. So I didn't put any conditions in the deal.
The thing that made the trade possible was because Ron believed in him. When that guy took the field, his team had a better chance of winning.
Well, guess what happened? Brett Favre comes here, and doesn't pass the physical.
He took about as big a risk as you could possibly take when he made the trade for Brett Favre.
Dr. McKenzie, who's still to this day the Packers orthopedic surgeon, said that's not going to be a problem. He's going to play 3 or 4 years. So I hear 3 or 4 years, that's great, you know. The deal's on, you know, we're going to keep him.
I understood my situation with being hurt, and they needed some type of insurance policy in the form of another quarterback.
This is the best player in the 1991 draft, no question about it. And I've got him.
I remember talking to him in training camp and thinking, I don't know. I mean, Don Majkowski still was the starter at that point. And you didn't necessarily think from day one, this guy's going to be a legend.
I knew right away that this was the right place. All that really mattered here was football, and that's really all I was here for.
We needed a tough, dynamic stud to set the tone for this organization. Ron Wolf deserves a lot of credit.
It turned out to be the greatest trade in pro football history.
Former NFL passing leader and Pro Bowl quarterback Don Majkowski starts the '92 season. Following back-to-back losses, Green Bay meets the Bengals in Week 3 at Lambeau Field.
They jumped out to a lead right away. I was standing on the sidelines and I said to myself, you know, you're going to be the shortest tenured head coach ever in the National Football League. I don't think we can win a game. And then Don got hurt.
Halfway through the first quarter, Majkowski goes out with an ankle injury.
Injuries occur. It's one of them what ifs. You know, there's no regret because I gave everything I had. I prepared as hard as I could, and you can't avoid certain injuries.
I had prepared as well as I could up to that point, considering I was not the starting quarterback. You know, you're drifting off and daydreaming, and it's hard to focus in on what you're doing and what you need to do in case your turn comes. Well, my turn came.
And here's second-year quarterback Brett Favre out of Southern Mississippi by way of the Atlanta Falcons. He cost the Packers a first-round draft choice. They are hopeful he can succeed in the NFL. Favre completes in the flat to Sterling Sharp, and Sharp.
I was making changes at the offensive line, to other guys that were the wrong changes. I was scrambling when I should have been sitting in the pocket.
You know, you have different plays as new guys come in and week out. You just change in the roster and try to make the chemistry of the Green Bay Packers work together. And, you know, in comes Brett.
It was chaos at its best.
With little more than 1 minute remaining, Green Bay trails Cincinnati 23-17.
Brooks takes the kickoff and steps out of bounds. It's like 92 yards to go.
Very bad play by Robert Brooks, who just elected to catch a kick inbounds and then step out of bounds with it at the 8-yard line. If he lets it go, they are in much better field position.
I was able to do what I do best, and that was, especially at that time, be more of a gunslinger.
19 seconds on the clock.
With the best receiver out of the game from the 35, 19 seconds left. Ball punch throws, touchdown!
And then he makes that pass to Kittrick Taylor that is unbelievable.
Brett had an ungodly arm.
A lot of quarterbacks wouldn't even attempt it, but for him to attempt it and make it, and the celebration afterwards will go down in history.
For its sheer significance and the innocence of the moment in lifting a perennial loser into an unlikely win, it'd be hard-pressed to come up with a bigger pass that he threw in his career.
Fans that probably forgot how much they loved the Packers until Brett Favre showed up.
The legend began then.
The legend is he forgot to go out and hold for the extra point because he lost his helmet and was jumping on guys, and he was having a blast, I can assure you of that.
And Don was hurt, so Brett had to hold. We needed the PAT to win the game. It was a tie. He run over to me, he goes, I said, you got to go in there and hold. Oh, yeah, that's right.
You know, maybe that's how legends are born. I don't know.
But of course, you can't look excited. You know, you can't show your emotion. Baloney, you can show your emotion.
You remember exactly where you were when Brett Favre threw the pass to Kittrick Taylor.
It was certainly a defining moment.
That was our first win under Mike Holmgren, and then you just kind of knew you had something special there.
Following the win with Favre at the helm, this is Majkowski's last game as the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
It wasn't Brett's fault that I got hurt, and he was just trying to do his job. I just looked at it that way and just tried to be as professional as I could about it.
The next week, we beat a good Pittsburgh team, and then we stumbled around a little bit, but they were learning. You could see it. It was happening.
The Packers and their fans have hope again because they have Brett Favre. They have Mike Holmgren. They have Ron Wolf. What they have in the NFL is credibility. They have not had credibility in the NFL for almost 30 years.
Wolf and Holmgren worked tirelessly to perfect personnel, teach a new system, shore up talent, and build a respectable and competitive team.
They came in from winning organizations that wanted to change things, and they did.
My focus was, let's get the best players we can, and let's find a way to win.
I'm not going to say we didn't have the players, but we needed players that were in it to win it and not so much about a paycheck.
When I talked to Mike about coming to Green Bay, Mike, we're going to stir the pot. We are going to keep changing the roster.
They went through so many personnel changes. Every week there were some transactions. They change out guys.
And they made it work. They being the coaches, they made it work.
There's new guys come in a week out. If you didn't perform on Sunday, you were out the door on Monday.
When I first came in, I looked at the depth chart, and I was so far down on that depth chart, it raised some doubt as far as would I even be here.
Well, he took his time, and he looked under every rock to find the right people that fit the program and look for ways to get better.
Man, it took me 5 years to realize just because Ron Wolf's in practice doesn't mean someone's job is at stake.
What Ron always taught us was don't worry about all the stuff on the outside, worry about the football.
Ron Wolf put together a very strong scouting staff, many of whom have gone on to be general managers in the National Football League.
Lets you do your job and expects you to do your job, and he puts no boundaries on you. So when you work for Ron, you understood that what's expected from you, get it done, and we're going to win.
He was a very intimidating, and so was Coach Holmgren, you know? Like, you had to be on your game.
He's a really good coach, really good people person, good judge of character.
Disciplined, organized, very organized, knowledgeable. You know, he knows the game of football.
His system was fantastic. Players coach, very intelligent.
There's this image that he liked to cultivate of this teddy bear, likable guy. And I can tell you in the practice field, he could get on people. And I think appropriately so. And strike a little bit of fear in them.
It was going to be done the right way every single time. It was all about excellence.
I learned from Coach Holmgren, be a star. Don't be average. I don't want to coach average play. Be all-pro, Pro Bowler. Be famous. Play like it.
Him and Ron Wolf seem to have the same personality, fierce competitors. They were tough. They demanded more of everybody.
Ron and I were exactly on the same page. We kind of had a vision, and we came together.
Every day, everything they did was towards winning.
He made you believe, at least he made me believe, we could actually beat everybody.
The Packers finished the '92 season at 9-7. A far cry from the dismal 4-12 the previous year.
We had to start winning important games, but you could see we were an ascending team.
We realized what we had to do here was certainly elevate our play.
We had a young quarterback, which is the pivotal piece for any team. And now it's a matter of building and putting other pieces together.
Through free agency coming into effect now, there is a player that can really change the dynamic of the Green Bay Packers.
The turning point was a game against the Eagles at County Stadium in 1992. Brett Favre got hurt but continued to play. On the opposing Eagles team that day was Reggie White.
He was the greatest defensive player I've ever seen.
He saw the courage of Favre. He saw how good he was, even playing hurt.
He could change an entire franchise from a defensive standpoint. from his defensive ability.
In 8 years with the Eagles, White had registered 124 sacks, the second most in NFL history.
Reggie sued the NFL to become a free agent. And they was like, well, he's not going to come. Packers?
I don't think anybody gave us a prayer in the world to get Reggie White.
In 1993, defensive end Reggie White, the most coveted player in the NFL's first year of true free agency, agrees to a 4-year, $17 million contract with the Green Bay Packers.
When free agency started, people would say nobody would ever come to Green Bay.
Free agency, supposed to be the thing that was going to kill little old Green Bay.
This was the start of the whisper guys in football. And the whisper guys were calling me, telling me that, you're fourth, these guys are ahead of you.
He was flying all over the country. Everybody was hiring bands and blowing up balloons and giving his wife fur coats.
He is in Detroit on interview, and he tells his agent he's done. He's not going to go to any more interviews.
We were starting to believe we had a chance, because he hadn't signed with anybody.
Mike Reinfeld, who was the CFO, convinced his father-in-law to fly Reggie and his agent into Green Bay, and guess what? It's in a snowstorm.
Ron and Mike took him to Red Lobster for lunch. Our dining budget was very low in those days.
He has catfish. He loves catfish. And up here, at that particular time at the Red Lobster, if you ordered catfish, it was not filleted. So as part of the deal, we told Reggie White that if he signs with us, we'll make sure that he gets filleted catfish at Red Lobster.
Then they come back over to Lambeau, and Ron said to Reggie, walk down that ramp onto the field. You can go anywhere. He says, you're already an icon in this league. You come to Green Bay, you're going to be a legend.
And Reggie, I knew, was a fine Christian man, and he knew I went to church. I phoned him, and it's true. I said, Reggie, this is God. I want you to go to Green Bay, and then hung up the phone. And hoping he wouldn't get offended.
Reggie was the free agent everybody wanted. And Reggie said that God told him to come to Green Bay. Thank you, God.
And then we had him signed, and I still get that call, and the whisper guys were telling me, these guys are ahead of you. And I wanted to scream into the phone, no, you son of a gun. It wasn't son of a gun either. No, you son of a gun, he signed with the Packers.
You can be cynical and say, well, yeah, he just chased the money.
At the time, it was a lot of money, a huge amount of money.
I don't care why he came. He came, and it made a big difference.
One heck of a stepping stone. Now we had legitimacy.
In a Sunday night game against Denver, White stuffs quarterback John Elway on back-to-back plays. His sacks come on 3rd and 4th down in the final 2 minutes after the Broncos reach the Packers' 43-yard line.
Reggie made those big plays right at the end and saved the game.
When he was cranked up, he was unstoppable.
He had a hump move that was just a tremendous move. He just take guys, spin them around, and go around the corner and knock the quarterback down. A different era then. You could actually tackle the quarterback.
Reggie White single-handedly pushes the Broncos out of field goal range. The Packers prevail 30-27.
When the game's on the line, he's going to make those plays that are going to be the difference.
We were now a challenger.
In a late December game against the Raiders.
Well, the day after Christmas, and it was just bitterly cold day.
One of the coldest games in Packers history.
I'm from Florida, and I went over to the thermostat, and I saw the number that I never thought I would see. A minus next to a number.
Right before kickoff, the public address announcer announced the kickoff temperature, and he said, it's 0 degrees, and the crowd went wild, went nuts.
I actually asked a few guys, do they forfeit the game? They was like, what? Because Oakland is coming from California. It's too cold, isn't it?
With the fumble that took place and Leroy Butler involved in the play and then Reggie getting the ball.
And Reggie White starts running up the field and laterals to Leroy. And Leroy takes it all the way.
As I was running, I pointed to this guy and said, I'm going to jump.
You're kind of like, well, what is he doing? He just jumped in the stands. Another tradition is born.
And I throw the ball down, and I jump up there, and the fans went nuts.
he stakes claim for the Lambeau Leap, which has gotten to be pretty famous.
When you get the chance to do the Lambeau Leap for the first time, it's very nerve-wracking. When you walk onto the field, you realize how high that wall actually is.
Just something I never forget, and it's all for the fans.
When I looked at our team, even down through the years, we had at most 4 players who are worthy of the Hall of Fame. Roy Butler is one of those players.
A tremendous teammate, tremendous player, crafty, instinctive.
He is a premier safety of his era because he could do 3 things: cover, tackle, and dog.
2 weeks later, with 55 seconds remaining, they beat the Lions on an impossible 40-yard touchdown pass from Favre to Sterling Sharp.
If I were coaching, I would never tell my quarterback not to make that throw because my quarterback would never make that throw. And that's true. Why you would ever roll to your left and just blindly turn back and throw to your right is beyond me. Not to mention, how would you even know anyone would be there?
The Packers win their first playoff game in 11 years.
In the most stressful situations, coaches are screaming and yelling. He'd have that smile on his face.
What's funny is that when I called that play, it was really the wrong play based on the situation.
I loved him. You could rip him. You could really go after him on columns, and he didn't care. He didn't. Loved the way he played, a happy-go-lucky guy.
When I drop back and I go to sling it to the left because I thought that's where Sterling was. And at that point in the game, I didn't care if he was covered or not, to be honest with you.
He would win at all costs. How many points you were down in the fourth quarter, he'd be out there slinging the ball around and trying to make things happen.
Fortunately, I was able to stop and realize that's not Sterling. And so I just kind of, like a chicken with his head cut off, kind of ran around, and I said, he's got to be on the other side. So it kind of makes the play even more like, are you kidding me?
There's not many Bretts in the world. His was such a natural expression of his soul. To play the game was everything to him.
I had it all planned from the start. Not really.
He had more fun playing than anybody I've ever been around, and it was contagious.
That's probably what stood out more than anything else. I think his love for the game, his passion, but then also making everyone around him better.
Whether it's the Kittrick Taylor catch or Sterling Sharp catching a ball against Detroit, there were a couple of games there where just changed things for us.
So proud of you. I'm proud of the coaches, the whole deal. And now, we're down in Dallas next week.
Turning this franchise around and just bringing back Packer football to where it should be.
That's as far as they go for the '93 season. After traveling to Dallas, the Packers lose in a divisional playoff game against the Cowboys.
In the 90s, the Packers were 1-9 against the Cowboys.
That was our big bugaboo. We always ended up playing in Dallas, and they were an AstroTurf team. We were a grass team.
So that whole era, the Cowboys were a team the Packers couldn't get past.
Every time we'd lose to the Cowboys, I would change hotels. I would tell the guy, we're changing hotels. Well, about the 8th time, we're out in Amarillo. Anybody that knows the geography is like 600 miles away.
You could see growth being made, but you also wondered, are they ever going to get past Dallas?
The Packers' defense improves to number 2, having ranked 23rd the year before. The only significant personnel change, the unprecedented addition of Reggie White.
Reggie was a centerpiece. When Reggie talked, people listened.
By far, probably one of the greatest leaders I've ever been around. He had a unique way of reaching anyone and everyone.
Every single person on this team, we got to kick some tail. Let's cut it loose.
Obviously, his dominance on the field speaks for itself.
Reggie White, somebody who was still hungry for his first Super Bowl, who continuously told us how important it was to get a ring.
Sitting 500 with 2 games remaining in the '94 season, The Packers play their final home game at Milwaukee County Stadium, an aging baseball field.
I laid awake many nights thinking, how do I leave there and not hurt people?
Didn't want to forget the Milwaukee fans that supported us all those years.
I don't think that fans around the country can understand how Milwaukee fans feel about the Packers once they find out, well, it's 2 hours away, and you're still that loyal. It's hard to explain.
We said to the people, we're going to abandon the stadium, but we're not going to abandon the fans.
I have never known anyone in sports more gifted with handling PR than Bob Harlan.
He let the Milwaukee people that own season tickets get 3 games up at Green Bay.
It was just an ingenious move on Bob's part to make sure that they were taken care of with their season tickets.
Come on along with us. We just can't financially play those games anymore at County Stadium.
97% of the Milwaukee ticket holders took the package.
He knew how to reach sports fans, whether it was picking up his own phone in his office or whatever. He just had the everyman touch.
People said to me, what was the toughest decision you ever made? It was leaving Milwaukee, quite honestly, because the people in the stands and their parents and their grandparents had supported this franchise and saved this franchise for over 60 years.
He made a wise decision. 2 league games and a preseason game.
It was the right thing to do. It was that simple. It was the right thing to do.
Now, I really admire Bob Harlan for that.
The week of the game, 2 Green Bay policemen come to see me and they said, Bob, the Milwaukee police are concerned about your safety this weekend. We're going to assign some policemen to you and your wife. And with 6 minutes to go in the 4th quarter, they want to take you out to your car. And at 6 minutes, I turn around, there's 3 Milwaukee policemen waiting for me. So I get up and I go and I look and here comes my wife and she's got all these policemen. It looked like we were all being arrested for being, out of order.
In the final game in Milwaukee, Favre lunges into the end zone following a 9-yard scramble. With 14 seconds left on the clock, he scores the winning touchdown, beating Atlanta 21-17.
So actually, I was out on Highway 43 when Brett dived into the end zone, and I had to go home at night and watch it on television to see the highlights.
It was yet another glimpse of a chapter of the legend of Brett Favre.
The game-winning touchdown, and the Packers clinch a playoff spot. It couldn't get any better than that.
As if saying thank you to the Packers' second home after 62 years.
Having grown up in the Milwaukee area, it was a bittersweet moment.
And to this day, I will have people from Milwaukee saying, thanks for remembering us. You don't leave these people after what they and their families had gone through for this franchise for all those years.
There was this feeling like, yes, this is the end of something, but there was such jubilation about how the game ended.
Once again, the Packers go 9-7, setting up a wild card playoff game against the Detroit Lions. December 31st, 1994, Lambeau Field, a balmy 30 degrees. The Packers hold the great Barry Sanders to an astounding -1 yard rushing to defeat Detroit 16-12.
In 92, 93, 94, you could feel the momentum building all along.
First year, we had a winning record. The second year, we got the playoffs. The third year, we won a playoff game.
The season ends with a 35-9 loss in a divisional playoff game in Dallas. The Packers are eliminated from the playoffs for the second consecutive year by the Cowboys.
The competition in the league is one of the great selling points of the NFL. What makes a team great? Leadership in the office, real strong coaches, leaders as coaches, and then first-class players. And over the years, the Packers, for the most part, have had that.
The 1995 season sees continued improvement, determination, and Favre's trademark grit.
The guy was tough. He was going to be there every single week.
Snapping turtle tough. You can run him over 1,000 times and he's going to get up and crawl to the side of the road and probably bite you when you go to pick it up.
In mid-November, Favre starts in his 56th consecutive game.
I honestly had no idea about a starting streak, nor did I care. I did care about starting every week. Now, there's a difference.
He had left the previous game against Minnesota on crutches, and you You hoped he was going to play. You knew he was tough and competitive.
When I tell people I love to play the game, I did love to play the game. I was also very aware that that would require playing with injury or playing hurt. That was no problem to me.
He completes 25 of 33 passes, 5 of which are touchdowns.
You knew when he was out on the field that he was going to give everything, every ounce.
I was always well aware of how I got my job and how I kept it.
If he was on the field, you had a chance to win the game.
The Packers beat the Bears 35-28 at Lambeau.
He threw the 5 touchdown passes on an ankle that was swollen so big that people were wondering how he could even play.
Not only did he last, he had a career-high 5 touchdown passes and led the Packers to victory over the rival Chicago Bears.
Love, hate, respect, disregard. The most storied rivalry in pro football. Nothing else comes close.
There's still nothing like Packers-Bears, just because of the history behind it.
My tenure here, we were 15-3 against the Bears. And one of those 3 was in Chicago. And there's this lady, as well dressed as you could possibly be dressed, doing like you choked, you lost the game. So it's a heck of a rivalry.
Goes in motion to the right. Here's a play action.
Christmas Eve, 1995.
Now he runs. Run it. 5. Now he's at the 3, maybe to 1. Did he get in or not? Right on the 1. They're going to rule he's right at the goal line. They're going to have to take a timeout here. And Brett Favre kneels down on one knee. They'll take a timeout. Boy, I tell you what, he hesitated a second too late, and the blockers, Aaron Taylor didn't know he was coming up behind him, or Aaron could have cleared a path for him.
Favre will not come out of the game.
Brett Favre brings him back to the line of scrimmage, and they start the 25-second clock. It is 3rd and goal at the 1-yard line.
If you're an offensive lineman right now, you're thinking, we got a block for this guy.
3rd down and goal at the 1 for the Packers.
Here comes Dorsey Levens.
Here's Brett Favre, and Brett rolling to the right. He's going to run it into the end zone. No, he threw it. Touchdown, Chimera. He could have run it, but he threw it instead to his buddy Mark Chimera into the end zone, wide open, and the Packers score a big touchdown.
The Packers win their first NFC Central Division title since 1972.
Wide open, and Chimera sure-handed got the football and got the touchdown. I'll tell you what, Mike Holmgren and Brett Favre surprised everybody in this place. You thought for sure Brett's been hurt. He's groggy. They're going to hand off to somebody, and they have him roll out and fire the ball. I'll tell you couldn't get Brett Favre out of there with a gun. He wants to play.
Pittsburgh probably should have won that game.
We put a young fella in there to cover Yancey Thigpen. And where he was on that play, I don't remember.
Lenny McGill, who's a great player for us, had slipped and fallen down.
In surprising fashion, they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-19 at Lambeau Field.
I just remember Yancey running a good route, being wide open. So open, it scares you.
Wide open. He drops the ball. I couldn't believe it.
Packers won the division because Thigpen dropped the ball.
That play, Yancey will never live down. And he blames himself so much.
So wide open. I don't think there's anybody within 20 yards of him.
Yancey's got some of the best hands, surest hands that I know of any NFL receiver.
I just remember the ball hitting the ground, and I knew we had a shot at the playoffs.
He was thinking more about his celebration dance than doing the fundamentals of catching the ball.
That's why it's a 60-minute game. You got to play for 60 minutes.
It was the first division title for the Packers since '72.
Bill Cowher, who was a good friend of mine, who was coach of the Steelers, after the game, he goes, "Congratulations, I'm happy for you." I go, "You don't know how happy I am. Thank you, Yancey Thigpen."
Leroy Butler kissed me live on television, and he's the only man who's ever kissed me live on television to this day. That's what I remember about Yancey Thigpen.
Favre is named the NFL's MVP for the 1995 season. He is the first Packer player to win the award since Bart Starr was named MVP in 1966. January 6th, 1996. A divisional playoff game at the San Francisco 49ers 3Com Park.
they were really good. And they had the first round bye, and they were favorites to win the Super Bowl.
Linebacker Wayne Simmons sets the tone on defense. Brett Favre completes 21 of 28 passes on offense. The Packers stun the defending Super Bowl champions 27-17.
Now we're there. We compete with these guys. We won the football game on the road. We can be good.
The Packers advance to the NFC Championship game for the first time since the Lombardi era.
When you run out of Lambeau Field, you look up and you see those names up there. Well, suddenly here they are.
Those guys were in our locker rooms every year, every day, every game they could, encouraging us.
They're standing in front of you, telling you what the feeling is to be a part of this marvelous tradition.
Though you won the last one, it's so important to bring Lombardi home. Bring pride back to Green Bay.
What it meant to wear that G, to wear that green and gold.
What an honor to run out of that tunnel, just follow in the footsteps of some of the greatest players in NFL history.
Yet again, for the third straight year, the Packers are eliminated from the playoffs by the Cowboys in Dallas.
I want to beat the Cowboys to make it feel like I did something huge.
Going to the playoffs that year in 1995 was the best thing for this football team because we really left Dallas Stadium knowing that we belong.
To make it there was fantastic. A lot of people didn't know if we were going to make it. San Francisco was supposed to be that team.
We've been through so much in the previous 3 years, losing in the playoffs.
But everybody came back in shape, ready, confident, believing that we could win. From the start of that season, we just felt like we were the team.
They had the top-ranked defense. They had Reggie White. Brett Favre was at the peak of his powers.
I used to have to write an article for a magazine called the Packer Report. I knew what would happen. We dominated defensively. Brett Favre threw the ball. I'd write them before the game because I knew what would happen. We were that much better than everybody else.
With 2 games remaining in the '96 season,
we just had the mindset that it's time to take care of business.
The Packers clinch a second consecutive NFC Central Division championship with a 41-6 victory over the Denver Broncos.
Our goal was to continue to win for that purpose. So it was just another game.
Brett Favre is again named the NFL's MVP by the Associated Press.
I don't care about the stats and all that stuff, and those will be forgotten. I want people to say, man, that guy laid it on the line. He played with everything he had. Wasn't pretty all the time, but it was completely devoted to his team and teammates.
I pinned my whole career with the Green Bay Packers on Brett Favre, and he didn't let me down.
January 4th, 1997. The Packers vanquish the 5-time Super Bowl champion San Francisco 49ers in a divisional playoff game at home. Then, in the first championship game played at Lambeau Field since the Ice Bowl.
My happiest day at Lambeau Field was January 12th of 1997. We're playing the NFC Championship game against Carolina.
We didn't have to go on the road throughout the playoffs, which is a big advantage to play home in Green Bay.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Lambeau Field, and it is the NFC Championship game.
Before a record-breaking crowd, the Packers dispose of the Carolina Panthers 30-13. They earn their first trip to the Super Bowl in 29 seasons.
The most exciting moment in my lifetime of working in professional football. To win a championship in Green Bay, Wisconsin, in Lambeau Field, is a feeling I can never, ever describe. As I'm talking about it now, goosebumps are running through my body.
I saw a grown man crying in the stands. I wish my dad was here to see this.
I really can't describe to you what that feels like, but what I can say is that it went by fast, and I wish I would have savored the moment even more. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
To win the NFC Championship game right here on Lambeau Field, it was priceless.
That moment, to see Bob Harlan and Ron Wolf and Mike Holmgren and Brett Favre on the victory stand, and Ron Wolf talk about, hey, Green Bay, guess where we're going? I still get chills thinking about it.
Bob was fighting back tears, and it was like, man, we did it.
Just to be in this stadium and win that game and see what it meant to these fans. It had been 29 years.
When I took the job, a lot of people called me and told me I was an idiot to come up here. This place is dead. And 5 years later, we're on top of the world.
And the Packers of 1996 were that great story.
The story is just so good, and I was just fortunate to be a part of it.
Unity, coaching, preparation, execution. You can be prepared, you can have good coaching, but if you don't execute, none of that matters.
It gets very emotional when you see that trophy that you're about to win, and it says Lombardi on it. You want to win that trophy.
When we talk about winning, it wasn't a one-time thing, it was an all-the-time thing. You get an opportunity to play in the Super Bowl, that's every kid's dream.
Expectations were high. We were underdogs. We were going to be the underdogs that surprised the world.
From the last guy on the bench to Brett Favre, everybody's important. And that's what Holmgren focused us on. And he said, let's go win the damn game.
At the Louisiana Superdome in New Orleans.
Greatest memory was the audible and touchdown pass to Andre Rison.
We got off to a good start. You know, that throw of Brett's got us off and running.
What better stage to pull out your bag of tricks? And it works.
Favre throws touchdown passes of 54 and 81 yards to Andre Rison and Antonio Freeman.
I remember Brett making a change at the line of scrimmage, and it was basically one-on-one. I was just a second-year guy, still young, still wide-eyed, and living a dream. And I just knew that I had to beat one guy. Brett uncharacteristically gave me a floating ball to catch, as opposed to the way he normally delivered his fastballs.
It's the ultimate and number one team sport in all of sports. It really is. You have to rely on each other way more than you do in any other sport.
I know it's the second longest in Super Bowl history, but it's the longest for a winning Super Bowl team, so we need to make that a stat.
Next thing you know, here it comes. Open up the floodgates. Desmond Howard takes over.
Desmond Howard returns a kickoff 99 yards for the game-clinching touchdown.
Our special teams was phenomenal in that game.
And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way they're going to kick it to Howard. Well, I'll be darned, they did.
Desmond was remarkable in that game.
Anytime you can get a touchdown from your special teams unit, you can get limitless opportunities of great field position because of your return guy, Desmond Howard, who was definitely the X factor in the whole Super Bowl.
And look what happened. Game over.
The Packers defeat the New England Patriots 35-21 to win Super Bowl 31.
If you're fortunate enough to get there and win, you know, it's something very, very special.
To win a Super Bowl after so many years of a drought, I just can't describe to you how that felt. The flip side of it is there is a tremendous amount of pressure, expectations that go along with it, and rightfully so. It's a double-edged sword. Take the good with the bad, and at the end of the day, pinch yourself, because it is a job that so many people would love to have.
When we were in the locker room after we won the Super Bowl game, and I held up the trophy, and I said, this trophy means a lot, but it means more to us than anybody in the world, and you. And the people in Green Bay, and the people in Wisconsin.
Yes, it can happen. And by Jove, it did happen.
Talking to Eugene Robinson post-game, we were looking at the trophy. We were saying how disgusting it was. The guys were kissing this thing. And then we kissed it.
I gave my ring to my dad. He's the man who taught me how to be a man. So I felt he deserved it.
In earning his Super Bowl ring, Reggie White sacks New England's quarterback Drew Bledsoe 3 times, a Super Bowl record.
Everybody wants to talk about our offensive unit, but we had a defensive unit that was, I think statistically will prove, was better than the 85 Bears defensive unit.
Here they come. Reggie. They got him again. Back at the 20. Hello, Reggie. 3 sacks.
Reggie White piled on a number of sacks late in the game to just really shut down everything that the New England Patriots had going on offensively.
He was unbelievable. Reggie was special.
Back in Green Bay, 100,000 fans lined city streets, and another 60,000 fans fill Lambeau Field to welcome home their world champion Green Bay Packers.
We had put a fair amount of planning into it with respect to the stadium event, return to Titletown. It was going to be a live TV event.
We heard the splatters of concern that this small town of Green Bay couldn't throw an adequate ticker-tape parade.
It was almost like I didn't know how to act because I had never been in this situation where the team I was covering won it all.
We landed Austin Chalmers Airport. Some of us were still wearing linen, short sleeves.
And it's a cold, cold day in Green Bay.
We were freezing. It was colder than the dickens. All these people are out.
It's gonna be a short tour, short little parade. We'll go through town. We'll come back 15 minutes. You'll be fine.
We've got this city of 100,000 people, and you've got people that are driving across the state that want to be a part of this.
It was around 3.5 hours later. We're still riding, still waving, borrowing jackets, mittens, coats, hand warmers, hot chocolate, anything we could to stay warm.
Became a moving sea of people that was something to behold.
By the time we got into Lambeau Field, people tell me that I sounded like I was inebriated. Well, I wasn't inebriated, I was frozen.
1997, Lambeau Field. Hallowed ground to players and fans, but at 40 years old, it's tired and outdated. The stadium is in need of an update.
Every time a team in the NFL moved into a new stadium, it jumped ahead of the Packers in revenue.
Harlan brings his proposal for the 4th stock sale in team history to the NFL.
And they're looking at me like, are you in a dream world? The problem with the owners is they think you're going to use this money for personnel. I said, we will account for every penny of the stock sale. Dan Rooney, the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, stood up when I was finished. He says, the Green Bay Packers are very important to this league. They've got a major project that they want to start. I think it's up to this group to give them our unanimous support and let them proceed with their stadium.
Well, the Packers' history is really one of the great pieces of NFL history. The way they've been able to survive coming from a small town. To this day, it's really a unique setup in terms of a franchise being owned by the fans.
The stock sale raises $24 million and gives 120,000 fans the chance to become shareholders. After much consideration to the future of Lambeau Field, these funds go toward the $295 million redevelopment that begins in 2000.
Within that is this desire to be a good community partner. I mean, we are stewards of this special place.
The 1997 season also proves successful and earns the Packers their 2nd straight NFC championship and Brett Favre's 3rd MVP title. Richie shares with Lions running back Barry Sanders.
We were very high going into that year. We really were.
Like everybody else, you're hoping to be able to repeat.
January 11th, 1998. In the championship game at San Francisco, running back Dorsey Levens rushes for 114 yards. The Packers win with a 23-10 victory over the 49ers. It's another trip to the Super Bowl.
The expectations placed upon the Packers were tremendous. Fans thought a 2nd Super Bowl was going to be a piece of cake.
This time, however, the Packers fall to the Broncos, 31-24 in Super Bowl 32.
You play it back in your mind. What should I have done differently? Did we not take the Broncos seriously enough?
Once you build up the team, the first pressure is just getting good.
It was a sin that we lost that Denver game. We were a better team, heavily favored, but hats off to Denver. They played better that day.
Then the second pressure is staying good.
To have a chance to be a two-time champion, and it's right there for you, and to not get it accomplished.
That's something that stays with you forever, too.
(1998) season's end. Reggie White is placed on the reserve retired list by the Green Bay Packers. Mike Holmgren resigns as Packers head coach.
As good as they were, it's a blending of great talent, which we had, a team over individual things. That team we had there in Green Bay those years was the most unselfish championship team I've ever been around.
After 6 years, Mike Holmgren leaves the team to become the head coach and general manager for the Seattle Seahawks.
Mike had a wonderful opportunity with Seattle.
I'm a firm believer that if a person has an opportunity to better himself, you better let him go better himself. And he went. The only way we could keep him here.
The tandem of Holmgren and Favre, it's like Simon and Garfunkel or whatever tandem you want to come up with. They're better together.
Mike Holmgren was the greatest coach I ever played for.
And if they had stayed together longer, I think the Packers would have won more Super Bowls.
He was a great teacher, great motivator, and he did a great job with his team.
January 11th, 1999. Ray Rhodes, former Packers defensive coordinator and recent head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, is named Mike Holmgren's replacement.
The personnel core was still there. But when you're not focusing on execution, things just got out of hand.
1999 proves to be a middling season.
We had no direction. We had no discipline.
All during the year, we weren't playing well. And Ron was on the road scouting. And he'd come in and see me on Saturday morning when he got off the road, and he'd say, I'm sticking with Ray. I'm sticking with Ray. I said, fine. It's your call.
For the first time since I had been a Green Bay Packer, we were lost as a football team.
The Packers close out the last season of the decade at 8-8.
When I got up in the morning, whatever failure there was, I couldn't blame anybody because I was looking at that person right in the mirror.
The season ends, and he comes in and says, Bob, I'm going to make a change. He says, I went down the practice field. He said, he's lost the team. The team's running this thing. He's not.
I went down to New Orleans to play Packers versus the Patriots at the Superdome. And so I went into the Kraft suite before the game, and Myra Kraft, the late Myra Kraft, she was a sweetheart. She said, I'm upset at you. She said, you sold so many more tickets to Packer fans than you did to Patriot fans. I said, what do you mean? Well, just listen to the crowd. This is a Packer stadium. The Patriots scored, and that was a 6-point difference. It was a 6-point difference. And I go in and I see Robert, and I say, hey, one more touchdown, and you take the lead. You take the lead. And I didn't have the lead out of my mouth soon enough when they kicked off, and Desmond Howard, that SOB, Desmond Howard runs it all the way back. And so I'm standing there, and the air came out of the balloon in the suite. One of the ways the Packers almost ruined my career